satsang. Such a beautiful time as 2021 is coming to a close, and it creates such a very fertile soil for our new growth to come in. Obviously, any minute, any moment of any day or week or month of the year is a beautiful possibility. Pujya Swamiji always says, whenever you wake up, it's morning. Wo aapka morte. But nonetheless, there is something about these days, just around the new year, where it seems to be a very fertile soil for change. So it's especially beautiful to gather at that time. And as always, we open with a question that comes in advance from our family joining us from all over the world through the great technology of the internet. Can't be here physically, but they join with us in satsang from their rooms, their homes, their cars, their offices, wherever they are. So in honor of our extended family, we take the first question from them and then open it to any questions that anyone here has. What are 3 moral guidelines that you would never break? Well, as far as moral guidelines, there's a lot more than 3. We look at the 10 yama niyam, or what sometimes in the West we call the yamas and the niyamas, but actually yama niyam, the do's and don'ts of a dharmic life, a yogic life. But 3, if I had to give 3, here's the 3s I would give. It actually comes from a very beautiful story, personal story. So I had been in India maybe 3-4 days, or in Rishikesh 3-4 days. Or actually, that's not right. I had been at the ashram for 3-4 days. I was in Rishikesh for a week before that. But I had been living at the ashram, staying here for 3-4 days. And so this goes back to September of 1996. Had been in India a total of maybe 2 weeks. A few days in Delhi, then a week in Rishikesh before I met Pujya Swamiji and started staying here. Then 3 or 4 days I'd been here. And I was in a state of just ecstasy. Just spiritual ecstasy. Those of you who have known me for a while, or have listened to satsang for a while, or have read my memoir, you know some of what those days were. I was just in ecstasy. And I said to Pujya Swamiji, 3rd or 4th day, I finally had the opportunity to actually meet with him, other than just in the big darshan that he gave. And you have to picture the scene, okay? I was a 25-year-old American student who had shown up with a backpack, knew nothing about India, nothing about Hinduism, nothing about anything. Had ended up at Param because I had had this extraordinary experience of awakening on the banks of Ganga, and then had had these experiences making me know that I was meant to stay here. So I had heard a voice as I walked through the ashram one day. I then had had my feet literally glued to the floor of the ashram a few days later. So I had all of these things happen that made me know this is where I was meant to be. But I didn't know why. I mean, none of it made sense. But as I said, it didn't matter. I was in ecstasy. So the scene is I'm sitting in Pujya Swamiji's area, and we are alone. First time I had been alone with him. I'm 25 in just spiritual intoxication. And I say to him, I say, Swamiji, I feel so incredibly blessed. So incredibly blessed to be here for these experiences I'm having. I want to give something back. What can I give? What can I do? Please. So he looks at me and he says, anything? And now remember, I don't have any idea what sannyas means. I don't understand what orange robes mean, that it means celibacy. I don't understand. I don't know any of that. I'm just here in this spiritual intoxicated state, young, didn't know anything, but so touched that I wanted to offer something. Here we are, and he says, he was about 45 at the time. And he says to me, anything? And in my head, I can hear my mother saying, just leave. Just stand up and walk out. In the West, unfortunately, there isn't an understanding in so many places of the blessing, the divinity, the sanctity of a guru. There's a lot of skepticism, there's a lot of cynicism, there's a lot of negativity around that whole idea. So I can hear in my mind my mother's voice saying, just leave. But I knew in my heart that whatever he asked, I would give him. Anything. So I say, yes, anything. And he looks at me, and he's looking straight into my eyes. It feels as though it's like burning this hole through me. And he says, you promise? And again, I can hear my mom screaming, and I can hear this very famous psychology teacher I had studied with at Stanford, who was the expert on cults and brainwashing and that kind of thing, and who had always warned us all about, religious organizations and anything. And I can hear now him yelling in my brain. I can hear my mother yelling in my brain. And they're both saying, just leave. Just stand up and walk out. But I knew. In the way that sometimes in our life we just know. It may defy everything we've ever learned. It may defy everything we've ever been taught or thought. But it is so true. And so true on such a deep level that nothing else matters. And so I knew, without a doubt, whatever he asked, yes, I promise I would give it. And I knew that. I had no idea what he was going to ask. But I knew I would give it. And so I say, yes, I promise. And the seriousness in his face then breaks, and he smiles. And he says, okay, 3 things. This brings us back to the 3 things of the question. He says 3 things. Number 1, get closer to God every day. He said every day when you go to sleep, you should be closer to God than you were when you woke up that morning. He said, and serve the world. You've been so blessed with so much ability, so much opportunity, so much resources. You've been so blessed. Serve the world. And he said, and third, be happy. He said, any sadness you have, any anger you have, he said, give it to me. And he held out his shawl like this, and he said, anything you have, just give it to me. He said, but just be happy. And of course, aside from being 3 rules to live by, it was such an incredibly powerful experience to be in that situation where literally I would have given anything, and yet all he wanted from me was get closer to God, serve the world, and be happy. And so I've really taken those 3 things as, you could say, the three rules that I really live by, that I wouldn't break. Doesn't mean that there aren't moments that I'm sad or moments that I'm frustrated, but that underlying happiness, that underlying sort of fundamental joy as kind of a river that runs through my life has always stayed. So if I had to give only 3, those would be the 3. Get closer to God every day, serve the world, and be happy. If anyone here has any questions, I would be happy to take them. Yes. Maybe what you can do if you have a question after this one, so that Sandeepji doesn't have to run around with the mic, maybe if you have a question, you can just come here into the center and then he can just give the mic to one after another. You're good because you've already got the mic. So.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for inviting all of us here in the Satsang, Swamiji. And I must tell you that I had an excellent spiritual experience to be part of the Ganga Aarti. And I love the word that you said there. Actually, it was the golden words, that when you love your child, you love all the belongings of your child. Similarly, when you offer your divine to the God, then you love the God and you love every single thing created by the God. Right? But I have just one question to you. You know, when we say that we love God and every single piece designed by the God we also love. But in the world, a lot of people, a lot of, animal creatures created by the love, those can easily distract you. They can easily shake your temperament. Then how to control yourself to be part of this, spiritual, intoxication stage and not to be distracted from the other creatures of the world. How to control yourself.
The pull, the distractions, चाहे हम माया कहते हैं, चाहे अपना मन का waves कहते हैं. There's always something that's pulling us off our grounding, off our anchoring. और ये आज का नहीं है, ये शुरू से. Today we have our smartphones and they beep and they ring and they vibrate and they do all sorts of things that distract us. We get an email every 2 seconds, some notification for it every 2 seconds. But that's not actually the core problem. Because for thousands and thousands of years, since the time our scriptures were written down, we've been being taught about taking care of the monkey mind. Monkey mind aaj ka nahi hai. This is the nature of the mind. Maya. This is not aaj ka concept. This is not, oh, you have a smartphone, so let's think of a word to describe the smartphone grabbing you. Or, oh, the makers of YouTube and Facebook are, sending you things to just waste your time. Let's think of a word. Chalo, isko maya bolte hain. To maya to shastra mein baat kar rahe hain. The nature of the mind to be distracted, the nature of the mind to be attracted by Maya, is something that existed long before not only smartphones, long before any phone, long before any television set, long before any shopping center. It's the nature of the mind. And so it's a practice of the mind. Dekho, you can't make the world stop grabbing you. You have to work with yourself. It's like that beautiful story of the king. Everybody used to walk barefoot. The kingdom, of course, in those days, thousands of years ago, was covered with rocks and rough ground and bushes and things. And the bottoms of everyone's feet always used to get, kind of scratched up. But this king was very sensitive. And so he calls one day a meeting of all of his officers. And he says, I'm tired of my feet getting cut up on the rocks, on the branches. I want you to take some good material and cover the floor of the entire kingdom. Wherever there's rocks, wherever there's bushes, I want you to cover it with some nice fabric so that wherever I walk, it will feel nice on my feet. Naturally, most of the officers are just like, yes, sir, yes, sir. But one of them says very, very humbly, Your Majesty, if I may, just a humble idea, to cover the entire kingdom, every square inch of the kingdom, with some nice fabric. Sounds like kind of an impossible feat. इतना कपड़े कहाँ से मिलेगा? फिर एक बार लगा दिया, then it gets torn, you have to keep fixing it. He says, may I humbly suggest, Your Majesty, that we prepare something that you can wear on your feet that are covered with something soft, so that wherever you walk, your feet will feel soft and nice. And that this was the beginning of what we call shoes. Right? And I love that story because most of us think that the answer to things is to fix everything in the world. The world is pulling me. The world is attracting me. The world is distracting me. I have to somehow make it stop. Nobody should talk to me. Nobody should call me. Nobody should email me. Nobody should honk their horn when I drive by. Nobody should ring my doorbell. Right? Nobody should disturb me. Well, that's kind of a tall order. Instead, rather than trying to make everything something that suits you, we work instead on our own mind that's getting distracted, that's getting pulled, that's getting attracted. And that's what all of our spiritual work is about. It's what our meditation is for. It's what our mantra jap is for. It's what our seva is for. It's what our introspection is for. Some of those things help the mind slow down. Some of them purify the mind. Some of them help us understand why we're getting attracted, where we're getting attracted. But all of them together give you a mind that doesn't jump around, that you're able to, I don't like to use words like control because it implies that there's kind of a master-slave relationship going on. But a mind that is your friend, a mind that is your tool, a mind that you can use rather than that uses you. And so that's what all of our spiritual practice is for. And this is not news flash of today. This is what our scriptures tell us. This is what all the commentaries tell us. This is what the sages and the saints and the rishis have been telling us. Hazaron salon se. Dhyan karo, jap karo, yog karo, seva karo. स्वयं को देखो, अपने विचार को देखो, उपवास करो. Why? Because it enables us to actually get free from the bondage of the mind. The world is not going to stop. It's just going to get more. I don't see a situation where we have fewer things beeping and buzzing and blinking and vibrating every year. I think we're going to have more of them. It's what happens with technology. We can't rewind life and say, I'd like to go back to the, pre-telephone, pre-TV era. Life moves forward. And so we move forward with it and we figure out, okay, how do I not get distracted? How do I not find myself pulled around? And the key answer is just staying conscious. Just staying conscious. We're on our computers, we've gone to send an email. Suddenly, some advertisement pops up. We click on it. Before we even realize it. Suddenly, we're 25 clicks into something and we're typing in our credit card number for something that we never wanted, we'll never use. Like we've been hypnotized. Or we go online to watch something short. Somebody has suggested, oh, you should listen to this song or watch this lecture. We go on for a specific purpose. One thing we're supposed to watch or listen to. 3 hours later, 30 clicks later, you don't even have to click these days. YouTube just does it for you. You just keep sitting. And it'll just keep Until you hit stop, it's going to keep playing things. But we have a choice. We have the choice and we need to use it. But we have to stay conscious to use it. If we allow our consciousness to be hijacked by somebody's algorithm that says, after this video, they're going to want to see this one. After this, they'll want to see that. Then we really become slaves. Then we're slaves literally to an algorithm. Somebody somewhere is sitting programming what someone like us is likely to keep watching. We've given up all of our freedom then. So we stay conscious about how we're spending our time, what we're clicking on, who we're spending time with. Just because you're invited somewhere doesn't mean you have to say yes. This is all part of our spiritual practice. Otherwise, you get very distracted, very pulled off track very quickly. वो तो जाना पड़ा. उन्होंने हाथ जोड़ के मेरे को इनवाइट किया था, 3 बार मुझको फोन किया था. इसका मतलब नहीं है कि जाना पड़ेगा. It just means you have to be loving and polite. But if we give up our own freedom and our own grounding and our own anchoring just because someone's invited us someplace or YouTube wants to show us something or we've seen some advertisement, then we're not walking closer and closer to moksha. We're actually binding our own hands and our own lives every moment. And this is where consciousness is freedom. I am aware. Do I want to watch this or no? Want to watch it? No problem. Enjoy. Want to go have coffee with that person? Wonderful. Go. Enjoy. But you don't want to? Learn how to say no. With love, politely. But grab that free will. Otherwise, everyone and anyone, in person, online, through an algorithm, is just looking to steal your time and attention. Because in many cases, it's rupees, it's dollars, right? The longer they can get you staring at the screen, the more likely you are to click buy now on whatever they're showing you. But even if somebody's not looking for our money, and they're just looking to steal our time and waste our time, we have to be conscious. Just like we lock our homes before we go out, lock your car when you park. In the same way, maintain a sense of real clarity over your sense of time and energy, attention. It's very precious. Beautiful. Yes. Namaskar. वो माइक चालू करेंगे, एक सेकेंड.
जो बात मैं जानना चाहता हूँ वो आपने पार्टली अभी बता दी है. फिर भी मैं समझता हूँ कि सभी धर्म के बोध पाठ भगवान गॉड डिवाइन की तरफ ले जाते हैं और समझ जानकारी से रोज काफ़ी समझ और जानकारी से रास्ते काफ़ी लंबे हैं और पूरा एक जीवन भी कम है. मैं आपसे जानना चाहता हूँ कि कोई छोटा रास्ता है. आपसे विनती है कि ऐसा कोई रास्ता हो तो बताइए. अंत में कैसे स्वतः को प्योर करें, ये जानना चाहता हूँ. धन्यवाद, आभार. थैंक्स.
So for those of you who didn't understand the Hindi, he asked that all of our different religions, different paths of spirituality, religious paths, they all take us to God. He said, but the path seems very long. Isn't there some shorter path? Some shortcut to God? Absolutely. Bhakti. Love. Love is the shortcut to God. Because जब हम प्यार करते हैं तो ऑटोमेटिकली देखो जब हम बात करते हैं एनलाइटनमेंट, मोक्षा, गॉड रियलाइजेशन, it's essentially two becoming one, right? The word yog in Sanskrit, what we say in the West yoga, but actually is pronounced yog. Literally the Sanskrit meaning, or the English of the Sanskrit, means union, to unite. And it's the union of this self, this lowercase s self, this identity, with the Supreme Self, the capital S Self, the union of Jivatma and Atma. Or you could just say the union of yourself and God, but in God is also you. You are not separate from the divine. So it's a union of the you who thinks you're separate with that supreme you who is one with the divine. Essentially, you can think about it as a two becoming one. है ना? However, in love two already become one. Though, if you want a shortcut यह है, प्यार. When you really love God, then you experience already that oneness with the divine. That experience of the lover and the beloved are one. There's no difference. And in that love of God, we may begin by loving God in a murti. Let's say in my temple I have a murti of the divine in some form. Bhagwan Krishna, Bhagwan Ram, Shankar Bhagwan, whatever murti maybe I have in my mandir. So maybe I begin by loving God in this form that seems separate from me. But as you love, as your heart opens, and you feel it, you feel that juiciness. जब हम रस कहते हैं ना, रस, bhakti ki ras, it's juice, it's juiciness. As we feel that juiciness of love for God, you feel it inside. You feel it in your heart. And you feel it चाहे आप मंदिर में बैठ रहे हैं, चाहे आप kitchen में हैं, bathroom में हैं, बाहर हैं. Wherever you are, you feel that love. And as you feel that, wherever you are, तो फिर यही अनुभव आने लगता है. You start to realize that actually God is inside you. Because you're loving God wherever you are. And then you start to experience that oneness with the divine inside. And then as you love God, you start to see the divine in all. You begin, of course, with your loved ones. It's easier. But then slowly, slowly, in all, you start to see that divine wherever you look. Becomes just the divine. But it begins with love. When you love someone, really love someone, wherever you are, you're thinking about them, right? सामने है तो ठीक है, सामने नहीं है तो फिर भी मन है उनके साथ, दिल है उनके साथ. They're with you. And that experience of being with God all the time, it comes from love. Sadhana, सारे जो साधना हम करते हैं, sadhana does not bring God. Pujya Swamiji always explains this very beautifully. He says, sadhana is not bringing God. हमको लगता है कि मैं काफी ध्यान करूंगा तो फिर भगवान सामने आएंगे. That God will come because I am meditating. Or God will come because I'm doing japa. इतना जप किया कि भगवान को मतलब आना पड़ेगा. Right? या कहते मैं जप करते रहता हूं लेकिन भगवान आते नहीं हैं. As though somehow your japa is what's bringing God. No. Pujya Swamiji says, he says God is always there. But what sadhana does is it cleans our glasses. Cleans our windows. Lets us see. जैसे सूरज हमेशा है, लेकिन अगर हम अंदर बैठे हैं, पर्दे बंद, तो फिर हम देख नहीं सकेंगे सूरज को. अंदर बैठ के हम सूर्य नमस्कार करेंगे, सूर्य का मंत्र बोलेंगे. We'll pray to the sun. We'll do our sun salutations. But the sun is already there. It's just that we're inside with our curtains drawn. So sadhana is that purifies our glasses, that cleans our window, that enables us to see what is already there, the divine that is already there. But if you love God, then you're already with God. फिर कोई पर्दा की बात होती नहीं है. When you're in love with someone, there's no curtain between you. There's no wall between you. You're just one. So your shortcut is to love God. And if you feel like that's difficult, because for a lot of us, the idea of just suddenly starting to love God, like especially if we don't think of God in a particular form, this idea of just suddenly being in love with this nameless, formless energy, it seems difficult sometimes. And so a really easy place to start is to choose anyone you really love. It can be a parent, a grandparent, your child, your best friend, your husband or wife. It could be the tree in your backyard. But choose someone or something you really love fully. And then ask yourself, is it just their body you love? Of course not. And if you've loved them for a lot of years, like children with parents or with grandparents or people who have been married a long time, think how many times the form has changed since you've loved them. But you keep loving them. Their body keeps changing. But you keep loving them. It's not the body you love. You may appreciate it. You may appreciate their beauty. But if they got in a car accident and their face got all messed up, you wouldn't stop loving them. Because what you love is their essence, their soul, their spirit. And that's God. If you're loving someone's soul, someone's spirit, someone's essence, what you're loving is God. If you only love their body, that's what we call lust. But if you really love their essence, they're in a good mood, a bad mood, looking good, not looking good, doing what you want, not doing what you want, but you keep loving them. What you're loving is essence. You're loving soul, you're loving spirit, which means you're loving God. So you can begin there. And then just keep paying attention to that divinity in them that you love. And through them, realize that you love God. And then start to see if you can love God in other forms as well. Slowly, 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 you'll increase the number of ways that you can love God. So that's the fastest and best shortcut that I know. Does anyone else have a question? Yes.
Pranam Mataji. Thank you for providing this golden opportunity. I have just one question. How we can differentiate between the love and the attachment? Like the mother has a child, she loves the child.
Yes.
And at the same time, she can find any child, but she cannot love that child at much extent. At that extent, she loves her child.
Of course.
So I want to know that is it attachment or it is love? I personally feel like if it is love, then it should be spread equal to all others.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, until and unless we are fully enlightened, okay, we are going to find some situations more easy to love. We're going to find some situations more easy to experience God. There's a reason that people feel inspired and uplifted and connected to the divine much more sitting on the banks of Ganga than sitting on a subway in New York City. God is everywhere. And for enlightened beings, you take, Paramhans Ramakrishna, stick him on a subway in New York, and I have no doubt that he would cry in love for God as he saw the divine and everybody walking on and off the subway, bowing at everybody's feet. But for the rest of us, there will be certain situations that feel more conducive to our spiritual growth. Certain situations where we feel closer to the divine. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's what we have temples for. It's what we do puja for. It's what we come to ashrams for. Nothing wrong with that. It just means you're still human. In the same way, if we are fully and completely awake, enlightened beings, we're going to love all exactly the same. Because we see the same divine in all exactly the same. But as long as there's still a bit of humanness in us, we're going to have a much easier time loving those who we feel close to. Loving strangers is very difficult. The only way I know to love strangers is only because you love God and you realize that God exists in all. And so in that way you would love everyone because you love God and realize God is in everyone. But to love someone who we are close to, that's very easy. Our hearts are open to them. We are connected to them already. And remember, we're connected also to their soul, their spirit, their essence. So we are connecting to the divine. But we're connecting through a being who feels very close to us. So I think it is thoroughly impractical. I'm not even sure that it would be ideal, but even if it were, thoroughly impractical to expect any mother ever to love every single child on earth exactly as much and in exactly the same way as she loves her own child. But I don't think that that has to be the goal. And the fact that she doesn't necessarily mean it's only attachment. We love where we are able to open ourselves to. Now we are open to those who we feel close to. We can open our hearts to those we feel close to. We become vulnerable. We trust. We let down our guard. We let them really see us. And so then we can love. If I've got my guard up, if I'm protecting myself, if I'm hiding myself from you, then I'm not going to be able to love you so much because there's this big wall between us. And so, on the highest spiritual level, yeah, we see the divine in all. We are open-hearted to all. That's the goal. It's where we're all walking to. But along the way, it's going to be a lot easier to feel love of God in your mom or your dad or your grandma or your grandpa than in some random woman walking down the street or some random man walking down the street. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as we respect all, care for all, there's no rule that says I must love everyone exactly like I love my mother or my baby. Attachment tends to be around how that other being acts, lives, chooses. So if it's just love, then regardless of what they wear, regardless of their grades in school, regardless of what career path they choose, regardless of anything, I still love them. The attachment is in, I need them to. They better dress like this or I'm going to be really angry. They better act like this or I'm going to be really angry. They must follow this profession, get this career, study this in school, or I'm going to be really angry. That's attachment. Attachment suffocates. Attachment doesn't let the other being blossom. Think about like a beautiful flower, but I squeeze it so hard I actually kill it. I'm just trying to hold on to it. I really love it. But in my loving of it, I've tried to own it. And so I've squished it in my hand. That's what attachment does. Love, we're able to just love it as it blossoms. We don't need to own it or control it. We can just love. Beautiful. Okay, one last one for tonight. Can you come forward? Thanks. We'll take this as our last question tonight.
Yeah, hi. Pranam Mataji. Slightly offbeat question.
No problem.
I am 22 right now. My question to you is that a lot of my friend circle and most of the people around me are very ambition oriented. For example, chasing career, chasing money. And as someone who is still starting out of the spiritual path, what would you like recommend or like advise to kind of make sure that I don't get like flown away with career and ambition or stuff like that?
Beautiful. Well, first of all, there's nothing that says that you can't have a career and be on a spiritual path at the same time. It shouldn't be either or. It's not be spiritual or be ambitious and successful. Ideally, we should be able to do both. Now, as you are embarking on a spiritual path, you may need some time, a few weeks, a few months, in which you are, for example, in an ashram, in a retreat center, where you're not worried about making money, you're not worried about punching a time clock, you're just focused on developing your spiritual grounding. But eventually the point is that experience is something that you carry with you into the world. And to be able to develop a life in which there's a job, there's a career, and there's also a spiritual practice, and they're not separate. But that I'm earning a living doing something that it may not be, necessarily what my fantasy was, but that's okay, as long as it's in alignment with my values, my ethics. I'm not working in a situation where it's violating my ethics, violating my values. But I'm doing it because if not, you need to beg on the street for food. I mean, somebody's got to work to make the money to buy the food. So either you work to make the money or you stand on the street and beg so that somebody else who makes the money gives it to you. See how you can develop a life. And 22 is still very young. You've got a lot of time. It's beautiful that you're on a spiritual path at this age. Let that path get strong. And yes, in the beginning you have to take care of it very carefully. We do a lot of tree plantation. Pujya Swamiji is very, very dedicated to planting trees. And when you plant saplings, you have to plant what's called a tree guard around the saplings. Because otherwise the monkeys eat them, the cows eat them, dogs eat them. So you have to plant a tree, you have to erect a tree guard around it to protect it. We then ended up, of course, having to hire guards to protect the tree guards because the tree guards were made of metal and people were stealing the metal. So you have to keep protecting it. Eventually we just shifted to bricks instead, but eventually that sapling will grow. And it'll become very strong, and then you don't need any kind of guard. Then the monkey comes and the monkey jumps on its trunk and swings from its branches, and the tree doesn't care. The dog comes, sniffs, pees on the, base of the tree doesn't care. So you have to do that caretaking a lot in the beginning. So at this point, it's a very precious time. Make sure at this point that you are spending the time, you're doing the right thing. Here you are in Rishikesh. Here you are in the ashram, here you are in satsang. Let that really grow within you, become your own. And then see how you can carry that first into just your day-to-day life, just interacting with friends, interacting with family members, going grocery shopping. How do you carry that spiritual life? And then, as you start to think about what your career might be, think about ways to utilize the skills you have, the abilities you have, in a way that's, number one, in alignment with your values, your ethics, some way that is serving and helping and benefiting. But also in a way that you're not working 120-hour work weeks. You may make a little bit less. You may not reach senior vice president. But that's okay. You know, when you go to these top hospitals, you know, the big hospitals all over India, Medanta, Apollo, AIMS, all the big good hospitals, they've got several different types of checkups. If you go in for an annual checkup, they've got, 5, 6, 7 different packages you can get. Each package has different tests that they'll do. The most comprehensive package, meaning the one that is testing everything, the one for those who have the most things wrong with them, the most in need of medical treatment. What are those packages called? Usually? Anyone? Corporate checkups. Exactly. Corporate exams, corporate checkups. It's never the mail clerk checkup. As we rush and rush and rush to become the head of these companies, we end up developing so much stress, so much else that's wrong, that we end up needing these very extensive and very expensive checkups, right? All the stress tests, corporate checkup. Now, for some people, that's their ambition, no problem. Let them do it. Somebody needs to run companies. But stay grounded in what your goal is. There just needs to be enough money that there's food on the table and sweaters in the winter and a roof over your head in the rainy season, and that your kids, when you have them, should be able to go to school, and everybody in the family should have access to medical care and whatnot. But beyond that, there's no point putting in all of that extra time just so you have more of something that you already have enough of. See how you can spend that time differently. That's strengthening your spiritual experience, that's deepening it. And then you'll be able to live both. Beautiful. Have a beautiful rest of your evening, everyone. Beautiful morning and day to our family joining us from online. And looking so forward to seeing you all tomorrow.